It's officially canning season, at least here in my house. I haven't done a whole lot of canning yet this year, but I do have a ton of canning stuff coming up, and we're gonna kick it off with some Mrs. Wage's hot salsa. I'm doing this video as part of a collaboration. I'm gonna be putting out 3 different videos this week as part of Mrs. Wage's Week, hosted by Tuliloo Creates. Between the 7 of us, we're gonna be putting out videos all week, as many as we possibly can manage to make with Mrs. Wage's recipes. I'm gonna be doing a hot salsa, but I'm also gonna be doing the chili base as well as the hot and spicy pickles. I'm gonna be doing 2 of these bad boys right here, but one thing that I did learn from Mrs. Wage's is that you do not want to double up the recipe, so I'm just going to be making this twice. I have all 10 pint-sized jars, actually I have 11 just in case we have an accident with one of them, but all of the jars have been boil bath canned, not entirely necessary, but I still like to do it anyways. And to make the process a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, I'm using some of my frozen tomatoes from last year. I have been promised that this particular way of peeling tomatoes is significantly easier than the usual parboiling and peeling all of them. One of the reasons that I decided to pick the recipes that I did is that these ones have the most minimal ingredients possible. This one in particular has dehydrated vegetables, including onion, green pepper, jalapeno pepper, chili pepper, and garlic, and then salt and spices. There's nothing funky, there's nothing weird in it. And all I have to add to it is 6 pounds of fresh tomatoes or 6 cans of 14.5 ounce tomatoes, a half a cup of vinegar, and this pouch. So it makes canning salsa significantly easier. Let's get to peeling. You see that? All it's doing is taking off the peel. It's not taking off any of the meat. Oh, if all of them are this easy, it is a winner chicken dinner. After how insanely easy and incredibly quick this was, I think I'm forever gonna do it this way. It was crazy. And there's like no meat left on these. Like none. It's insane. Oh my gosh, do this. Anyways, on to the next step. We need to chop these up into whatever size pieces you want your salsa to be, and we're gonna put them into a pot. Oh, one thing that I found with this, you don't want to let them thaw all the way. They just retained more of their juices, I found, with the ones that had been still partially frozen versus the ones that had thawed almost completely. So I'm just gonna cut all these up and bring it back for the next step. All right, so next up we're gonna add in half a cup of 5% vinegar, white distilled vinegar. And I feel like I have to say the 5% now because companies have started coming out with 4% vinegar. That will not work in its place. But I would imagine at some point they'll start coming out with alternate recipes that include that if that is what the manufacturing process has gone to. And then we're just gonna pour this pouch in. Ooh, it looks pretty. Got all the different spices and different chunks and all that sorts of stuff you love in your salsa. And there is actually a warning on there saying to be careful breathing that in. So all we're gonna do with this is stir it up, put it on the stove, bring it up to a boil, and then reduce the heat and simmer it for 10 minutes, stirring occasionally. I'll see you back here when that's done. And while that's over there cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and peel the rest of the tomatoes for the second batch. That way they'll all kind of be ready to go in the canner at the same time. Batch number 1 has finished cooking, and we're just gonna go ahead and load up our jars. According to the recipe, it says we should get 5 pints for each one. Fill it up to 1/2 inch headspace. Now I'm just gonna go through, we're boiling. Now with this extra pint, I'm just gonna go through and adjust all the headspaces to 1/2 inch. And we're gonna wipe all the rims of the jars with vinegar. You don't necessarily need the vinegar for this particular recipe because there's not really any grease, but you want to make sure that you're getting rid of any particles that might be on the rims of the jars. So next we're gonna go ahead and debubble just to see if there's anything stuck inside of there, like any little bubbles down deep. It's a very liquidy recipe, so you're probably not gonna make much of a difference, but you just want to make sure. Here we go. It actually kind of did. Now we're going to go ahead and wipe the rims with a paper towel with vinegar on it, and that's to get rid of any particles that might be on the rim of the jar, and just to make sure that our lids are going to be able to make a nice firm seal. The next step is going to be to put on our flats on top of these jars. As always, I'm going to be using 4 jars canning lids. I use these in all of my canning projects because these things are fantastic. They have an amazing seal. The metal themselves are just super strong, and to the date, I've been using these since January of 2022. I have not had a single failed seal, so it'll happen at some point, I know, but I think that's a pretty dang good run. All right, I'm just gonna wash up a few of these, and then we're gonna put them on top of our jars. Then we're gonna put our rings on fingertip tight. And the way that I've discovered is as tight as I can get it with these 3 fingertips. It's pretty much perfect. If you're some super strong Hulk, obviously you'll need to adjust accordingly, but I'm not. And we're gonna go ahead and put the canning pot back onto the stove. I don't know if you can see, but it's just kind of steaming. I used this pot to sanitize all of these jars, and it's just been sitting there for about an hour. You want the water to be nice and warm, but you don't want it to be anything above, from what I've heard, 180 degrees, and this is definitely below 180 degrees. So we have all 10 jars in here. We're gonna go ahead and put the lid on it, crank the heat up to high, and once this comes to a rolling boil, like a super duper rolling epic boil, we're gonna set our timer for 40 minutes. And that is from 0 to 1,000 feet of elevation. And for every extra 1,000 feet, the package says to add 1 minute. So we're gonna process for our appropriate time, and you should too. Once that time is up, we're gonna turn the stove off, remove the lid, and walk away for 5 minutes. Once that 5 minutes is up, we can slowly start to take the jars out of the canner. We're back, it's a few days later, and it's time for a taste test. This stuff is so good. I already knew it was good, but I want to make sure I did a little taste test for you guys on camera. If you guys enjoy a pleasant amount of heat that's not super crazy, but definitely present, this is a really good salsa for you guys to go ahead and give a try. This is honestly my first time, I think, ever using a Mrs. Wages recipe, and I'm kind of hooked. That was the easiest thing ever. It was literally just a little bit of vinegar and the tomatoes, add the packet in, and it's a fully seasoned salsa. I mean, you can't really get any better than that. Remember that this video is part of Mrs. Wages Week. I'll be sure to link down below all the channels that are taking part in this collaboration so you can check out all of theirs. If this wasn't the particular recipe that you were looking for, between all of us, I'm sure we're probably getting just about every single Mrs. Wages packet available. The coffee pot's making a lot of noise, so I'm just gonna eat some pork rinds and salsa while we're waiting for it to stop. This particular packet of Mrs. Wages might be a little bit hard for you guys to find in your local area, and if that's the case, I'm gonna link this one for you guys down below so you can buy it through Amazon if you like to. But if you have a ton of ingredients that are growing in your garden and you want to know what to do with them, click this video here that I made last year showing you guys how you can make zesty salsa on your own with all your own ingredients. Peace out, sauerkraut.